The desert wind blew like a whisper from the grave, dry and coarse, carrying sand and secret across the dead stretch of nowhere. No birds sang, no trees grew, just sun-bleached bones of cattle and the crunch of boots against dust. Caleb Knox hadn't spoken in hours. The silence suited him. Words were wasted where ghosts walked louder than men. His horse, a lean black Mustang with scars along its flank, shifted under the weight of both man and memory. He pulled the brim of his hat lower as the sun began to bleed out behind the mesa, smearing orange and red across the sky like war paint. Somewhere ahead, smoke curled into the air thin, gray, and lazy. A fire meant people. People meant trouble. But trouble was better than hunger, and Caleb had gone 3 days on nothing but creek water and regret. He rode slow toward the smoke, one hand resting near the revolver at his hip. The shack came into view first, lopsided and patched with scrap iron. A fence leaned around it, more suggestion than barrier. Inside the yard, a woman chopped wood with short, angry strokes. She was barefoot. Dust clung to her ankles. Her hair was tied in a ragged knot, and her dress, once blue, had faded into something that matched the desert. She looked up, didn't flinch, just watched him approach with the steady eyes of someone who had nothing left to lose. He dismounted without speaking. She didn't ask his name, didn't offer hers, just jerked her chin toward the water barrel beside the porch. He drank deep. It tasted of metal and heat. "You look like hell," she said finally. Her voice was smoke and gravel. "You seen it?" Caleb wiped his mouth on his sleeve. "Been through worse." She didn't smile. "They all say that. Until it comes." Knocking again. He looked around. No animals. No children. No laughter. Just the wind, the woodpile, and her. "You alone?" he asked. She nodded once. "And better off for it. That why you stay way out here?" "That," she said, splitting another log clean in two, "and the world don't come looking for what it already buried." He liked her. Not in the way men like women, in the way dry ground likes rain, unexpected, dangerous, necessary. The sun dipped low. Coyotes howled far off. He offered to take first watch without being asked. She nodded and went inside. He sat on the porch, shotgun across his lap, watching the shadows stretch like fingers reaching for the house. Just before midnight, the wind changed. It carried a new smell: leather, sweat, gun oil, riders. He stood slowly, muscles stiff, heart steady. 4 silhouettes crested the ridge, silent, deliberate. The woman opened the door behind him, rifle already in hand. "Friends of yours?" she asked. "No," Caleb said, "but they're looking for me." She didn't ask why, just stepped out beside him, barefoot on the boards, eyes like flint. As the riders came closer, their leader raised a hand. "Caleb Knox," he called out, voice too calm. "We'd been chasing your dust since Santa Cruz. You should have stayed there," Caleb said. The man laughed. "Maybe, but the sheriff wants your head, and I want the coin. You ain't getting either. Don't make this hard. It already is." Thunder cracked, except it wasn't thunder. It was a rifle, hers. One of the riders dropped like a rag doll. Caleb didn't wait. His revolver barked twice. Another fell. The last 2 scattered, spooked horses, kicking up dirt and curses. In under a minute, it was quiet again. The woman reloaded slowly. Caleb turned to her, breath ragged. "I didn't. As for that," she looked at him, calm as a drawn blade. "Didn't have to." The moon rose behind them, pale and cold. In the dark, nothing moved but the smoke from the gun barrel and the wind, still carrying stories nobody wanted to hear. By morning, the bodies were gone. Caleb dragged them behind the ridge before the sun could fully rise, burying them shallow beneath rocks and silence. The woman didn't help. She didn't need to. Her part had already been played. When he returned, she was boiling coffee in a dented tin pot over the fire, face unreadable, eyes fixed on the flames like they might rewrite her past. He sat without speaking. She poured him a cup, black and bitter. He drank it anyway. "You always shoot first?" he asked. She shrugged. "Only when I've been given reason." He wanted to ask what reason she'd seen last night, what made her lift that rifle and take a life for a stranger. But he didn't. Some questions only stirred what ought to stay buried. They ate together, silent again, dry bread and beans that tasted like dust. He didn't complain. Hunger made a man honest. After the meal, she finally looked at him. "Why are they hunting you?" "Shot a lawman." Her brow lifted. "He deserve it." Caleb nodded once. "He earned it twice." She didn't ask more. Instead, she stood, wiped her hands on her skirt, and picked up a bucket. "Well," she said, "if they're coming again, I got chores to finish before they do." He watched her walk away, bucket swinging, boots still nowhere in sight. She moved like someone born to survive, not to be saved. He liked that more than he should have. That evening, as the sun bled out again over the same jagged ridge, he heard her humming, a low tune, familiar yet out of reach, like something his mother used to hum when the world was quiet and full of smoke from the stove. He leaned against a porch post, cleaning his revolver, the metal catching firelight in short flickers. She sat beside the fire, sewing a tear in the hem of her dress with calm hands and a steady rhythm. Her name came to him uninvited. "You got a name?" She paused. "May. Short for something?" "No." He nodded, folding the cloth over the revolver. "May," he repeated. Fitting. She didn't ask his, didn't have to. The men from Santa Cruz had already named him loud enough. Still, she said it soft, as if tasting it. "Caleb." He looked up. "Yeah." Her eyes lingered. Not soft, not warm, just steady, like she was waiting to see if he was man or myth. Later, the wind picked up again. Dust curled at the edges of the yard. Coyotes cried like women mourning in the hills. Caleb walked the fence line twice, eyes on the horizon, hand near his gun. Nothing yet, but something stirred in the dark, the kind of stillness that meant a storm. When he came back to the cabin, May was already on the porch. She handed him a blanket, rough wool, smelling of smoke and old pine. "Storms comin'?" she said. He nodded. "You always stay through the storms?" "Ain't never been one worth running from." That made him smile. Just a flicker. The blanket felt heavier than it was, not from weight, but from meaning. No one had handed him anything in a long time. They didn't speak much that night, just sat under the stars, the sky wide and cruel, the desert cold creeping in like a thief. Inside, the cabin glowed soft, a yellow sliver of light leaking from under the door. Behind them, the dark hills loomed like giants asleep, and Caleb knew this quiet wouldn't last. Riders didn't turn back, not when there was coin, not when there was pride, and he'd left too many unfinished things behind him to think this place would stay untouched. But for tonight he had coffee, firelight, and May, and for a man like him, that was already more than he deserved. The next day broke slow, the sun crawling over the ridge like it didn't want to rise. Caleb stood shirtless by the trough, washing, dust and blood from his arms. The bruises across his ribs were turning the color of bad fruit. May watched from the porch, one hand wrapped around her tin cup, and the other resting lightly near the rifle, leaning against the doorway. He saw her looking, didn't flinch, let her see the scars, let her wonder which ones were from bullets and which from choices. "You ever fix a fence?" she asked. "I've broken a few," he replied. She nodded toward the far pasture. Post by. The creek's rotted through. If you're staying, might as well make yourself useful. He didn't argue. Took her axe and the coil of wire without a word. The morning passed with sweat and silence. They worked in rhythm, not as strangers, not quite as friends, just two people who had run far enough to forget what being seen felt like. By noon, the sun was high and mean. Caleb wiped his brow with his sleeve and leaned against the fence. May stood nearby, arms crossed, dust on her cheek like war paint. "You always work like you owe the land something?" she asked. "I do. What did you take?" He didn't answer right away. His gaze drifted toward the hills, toward places he no longer said aloud. "Time," he muttered. "Peace. Whatever life I was supposed to have." She didn't pity him, just nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. Later that evening, after the tools were hung and the fire lit, Caleb found her sitting on the cabin steps, polishing a rusted horseshoe with an old rag. He joined her without being asked. "You're expecting horses?" he asked. "No," she said, "but it's something to do." "You ever leave this place?" "Once," she said. "Didn't like what I found." "What was it?" "A husband with fists. A town full of people who knew and looked the other way." He was quiet for a long time. "You kill him?" She didn't look at him. "No, but I buried him anyway." The wind shifted. Somewhere far off, thunder rolled like distant drums. That night they shared whiskey from a chipped bottle, passed it back and forth between long silences. The fire crackled, casting long shadows that danced against the logs. Caleb told her about Yuma, about the sheriff with the iron badge and the snake smile, about the boy caught in the crossfire, about how justice and murder sometimes shared the same face. She didn't speak when he finished, just poured another finger of whiskey and handed it to him. "I don't judge men by their stories," she said, "only by what they do when the story's still being written." They slept inside that night, both too tired to keep watch, both too proud to admit they were glad for the other's breath in the dark. The cabin was small, her bed in one corner, his blanket and rifle near the door. Outside the wind cried through the cracks in the shutters, but inside it was still. Not safe, just still. Just before dawn, the sound came. Hooves, dozen. Caleb was on his feet before he opened his eyes. May was already at the window, rifle in hand. Her breath fogged the glass. "How many?" he asked. "Too many. They find us, or they found something else." They moved quick, loaded the guns, packed the shells. No time for breakfast, no time for questions. Then came the knock. 3 slow raps on the door. Not urgent, not angry, measured. Caleb's hand hovered near the latch. May's voice was calm, almost curious. "You ready for this?" "No," he said, "but I've run enough." He opened the door. The man standing on the other side of the door wasn't what Caleb expected. No badge, no gun drawn, no hunger in his eyes. Just a tall figure in a tan duster, dust covering his boots like old regret. His face was lined, not with age but with knowledge. Behind him stood 8 riders, all watching but none speaking, their horses restless as if sensing the tension coiled inside the cabin's walls. The man tipped his hat. "Name's Alden Crow," he said. "You Caleb Knox?" Caleb didn't answer. "Didn't need to?" Alden nodded once. "Didn't come to kill you. Least not yet. Got a proposition." May stepped forward, rifle still tight in her grip. "You show up with guns and men, you better talk fast." Alden didn't flinch. "We're hunting a man named Silas Vane. Your name came up in his company." Caleb's jaw tightened. That name didn't just bring back memories. It brought back nightmares. Silas is a shadow. You don't hunt shadows. Alden's eyes narrowed. He burned 3 ranches between here and Dry Hollow. left a family nailed to their own barn. You know where he's headed? Caleb stepped outside, closing the door behind him. May stayed just inside, close enough to hear, close enough to shoot. The wind stirred dust between their boots. Silas don't move unless he smells blood or gold, Caleb said. If he's out there, he's got a reason. And if you're chasing him, you'd better hope he don't turn and chase back. Alden nodded slowly. You rode with him once, didn't you? Caleb's silence was its own confession. We can protect you, Alden added. You help us find him, we clear your name in Yuma. But Caleb wasn't a man who believed in clean slates. You stepped off the porch, boots crunching dry earth. Silas doesn't run from men like you. He lures them. You ride after him. You better bring more than hope. He looked back at May, then at Alden. He won't stop until someone makes him. Alden studied him for a long moment. Is that someone you? Caleb didn't answer, just turned his eyes toward the hills, toward whatever hell was waiting out there. The men left without drawing steel. Dust rose behind them like smoke. Caleb stood in it long after they were gone. May joined him, brushing hair from her eyes. You gonna ride with them? No, he said. They'll die fast if they go in blind. And if you go? I might die slower. She didn't argue, just nodded. You got a reason? He killed someone who never should have bled. She placed a hand on his arm, rough fingers against weathered skin. Then go, she said, but come back. Caleb turned to her, and in the harsh morning light, something softened in his face. Not forgiveness, not redemption, but something close enough. He saddled his Mustang before sundown, packed the rifle, 6 tins of beans, and the letter he never finished writing to the brother buried outside San Miguel. May stood in the doorway, arms crossed. You don't owe me nothing, he said. You stayed, she replied. That's more than most. He didn't kiss her, didn't touch her, just tipped his hat and rode into the dark, the desert swallowing his silhouette like it always had. But this time something followed him. Not guilt, not fear, not hope. The trail to Silas Vane wasn't marked by signs or maps. It was marked by ash, by empty graves, by the silence that follows screaming. Caleb rode north, past where the rivers dried and the trees twisted like they were praying for rain. Each mile stripped something from him: blood, sleep, memory. But he rode on, boots tight in the stirrups, eyes narrowed against the wind. He knew Silas, knew the way he moved, the scent he left behind: gunpowder, sweat, and rot. And he knew that wherever Silas went, he left ghosts with names. Caleb had one of those names burned into his chest. By the 3rd day, he found the cabin, or what was left of it, just blackened timbers and the charred ring of a cook fire. Smoke still clung to the air like it didn't know the fire had died. 3 bodies lay out front, 2 adults and a boy no older than 10. Their boots were gone, their hands tied. Caleb didn't turn away, didn't blink. He just pulled a shovel from his saddlebag and dug. The sun was cruel, the earth dry. By the time he finished, his shirt clung to him like a second skin, and the graves stood crooked, but deep enough. He stood over them a long while. Then he spoke just 3 words: I'll find him. That night he made camp beneath a cluster of rocks shaped like broken teeth. The fire crackled low. The stars above were sharp and white, watching without mercy. He unrolled his bedroll, back aching, mind racing. Then he heard it, hoofbeats, slow, deliberate. Someone wasn't hiding. Caleb sat up, pistol drawn before. His boots even touched dirt. A figure appeared between the rocks, silhouetted against the moon. A young woman, slim, dust-covered. She rode a pale horse and wore a brown poncho too big for her shoulders. She dismounted slowly, hands raised, "I ain't here to shoot," she said. "Then you're already smarter than most," Caleb replied. She stepped closer, firelight catching her face. Freckles, sunburn, eyes that had seen too much. "Name's Mercy," she said. "I've been tracking Vane since he burned my sister. Alive in a schoolhouse near Tumbleweed. Folks say you used to ride with him." Caleb said nothing. "I don't care what you did back then," she added. "Only care what you'll do now." He looked at her long and hard. Why follow him? Because someone has to. He poured her coffee, the only welcome he had left. She sat across from him, cradling the cup like it held something more than heat. "You planning to kill him?" she asked. "I've planned worse. Then we ride at first light." He didn't argue, didn't warn her, just nodded. She slept with one eye open. So did he, Dot, and somewhere, miles ahead, Silas Vane was smiling. He could feel them coming. He always could. Dawn came red, like the sky had been slit open. Mercy was already saddled by the time Caleb finished buckling his holster. She rode like someone born in the saddle, no wasted motion, no fear in her spine. They didn't speak as they left the canyon, no need. The wind carried enough voices of its own. Caleb led them northeast toward the Badlands. He remembered the place well. It was where Silas liked to vanish, a maze of stone and shadow where lawmen lost their nerve and outlaws left their bone. They passed a burned-out stagecoach near noon. Buzzards circled lazy in the sky. Mercy didn't look away, not even when the wind shifted and the smell hit them. Caleb watched her. There was steel in her, brittle but sharp. "You ever kill a man?" he asked. She kept riding. "Once. He tried to make me into someone I wasn't. Now he's part of the earth." Caleb nodded. "Then you'll survive." That night they camped beneath a rock shelf carved by wind and time. Caleb cleaned his rifle, while Mercy sharpened a knife against the heel of her boot. "How close do you think we are?" she asked. Caleb stared into the fire, close enough to smell him. "And when we find him, we don't talk, we don't wait. We end it." She nodded, but her fingers trembled slightly. He noticed, didn't mention it. Everyone shakes before blood. It's what you do after that counts. Dot, just before sleep claimed them. Mercy asked, "What made you leave him?" Caleb's jaw tightened. "A town called Dry Chapel. Silas rode in for supplies, left 20 corpses and a burning church. There was a girl hiding under the pews. He saw her, and he laughed." Mercy didn't respond, didn't need to. The silence between them said enough. Dot, the next morning, the signs were there. Fresh tracks, 3 horses, a cold fire ring, a strip of canvas torn and left fluttering on a thorn bush. Caleb crouched, ran his fingers through the ashes. There, only a few hours ahead, they rode fast, dust trailing behind them like smoke. The sun climbed high and cruel. The land narrowed into a throat of red rock and dead brush. Caleb slowed as they approached a narrow pass. The air felt wrong tight, like it didn't want to move. Then came the shot Dot had rang off the canyon wall like thunder. Caleb's horse reared. Mercy dove for cover. Another shot followed, then silence. They huddled behind a boulder, breath tight, ears straining. A voice called out from above, echoing off the stone. "Caleb Knox, been waiting on you." Silas. That voice hadn't changed. Smooth as oil, cold as bone. "Bring the girl, too," Silas called. "She's got vengeance in her eyes. I'd like to see how it tastes." Mercy looked to Caleb. "He's up high." "Yeah," Caleb muttered. "Where the devil thinks he's God." He checked his. Bullets, 5 left. Then he looked at Mercy. "You still with me?" She loaded her rifle. "I was never behind." And they moved quiet, low ghosts between stone. Silas Vane was waiting. But so were they. The canyon swallowed sound like a grave. Caleb moved left, eyes scanning the ledges, ears tuned to every scrape of rock and breath of wind. Mercy crept to the right, rifle low, boots silent against the dust. Somewhere above them, Silas watched, his voice rolling down like thunder laced with poison. "You always did like company, Caleb," he called. "Figured you'd bring the law. Didn't expect a girl with fire in her hands." Caleb didn't answer. He never answered ghosts. He signaled to Mercy with 2 fingers loop around, find elevation. She nodded once and vanished between the rocks. Another shot rang out, this one closer. It chipped the edge of the boulder beside Caleb's head. He didn't flinch. He just smiled. Silas never aimed to kill first. He liked the hunt. Always had. Caleb rolled low across the next outcrop, pressed flat against the stone, and waited. Above. Mercy climbed with hands and knees, slow and sure. She moved like someone who'd climbed trees as a child, who'd learned balance before trust. Her breath was tight in her chest, but her eyes were locked on movement, a glint of metal, a flicker of cloth. She found him. Silas Vane was perched behind a dead cedar, rifle braced, eyes down the canyon. He hadn't seen her. Not yet. His coat flapped in the wind like a flag of warning, black and sun-faded, stained with history. She could shoot him now, end it, but her hand trembled. Caleb saw her far above, crouched on the ledge, rifle leveled. He held his breath. Then Silas moved, turned just slightly, saw the girl. "Ah," he grinned, teeth yellow and sharp. "There you are." He swung his rifle. Mercy fired first. The shot cracked across the canyon like judgment. Silas stumbled back, clutching his shoulder, blood blooming through his coat. He cursed, dropped his weapon, tried to run. Caleb was already moving. He climbed the ridge fast, boots scraping, hands bleeding on sharp rock. By the time he reached the top, Silas was dragging himself toward a narrow path, one arm useless, the other clutching a knife. Caleb stepped in front of him. Silas froze. For the first time he looked old. "I knew you'd come," he said. "I always knew." Caleb didn't answer, just raised his revolver. "Still got that twitch in your hand?" Silas sneered, still shaking like the boy who... The shot was clean, through the heart. Silas Vane fell without grace, without last words. Mercy stood behind Caleb now, rifle lowered. Her face was pale, eyes wide but steady. "Is he dead?" Caleb holstered his weapon. "He is now." They didn't speak for a long time, just stared at the body, at the end of something neither of them could name. Finally Mercy asked, "What now?" Caleb looked to the horizon. "We bury him, then we ride. Back? Back. To what?" He thought of May, of the cabin, of coffee in tin cups, and the way her voice sounded when she wasn't trying to be strong, to whatever's left. They dug the grave in silence. No prayers, no crosses, just earth over a man who brought only ruin. When it was done, they rode, out under a sky turning gold at the edges. The wind was warm. And for the first time in a long time, Caleb didn't feel hunted. He just felt free. The ride back was slower, not from caution, but weight, the kind that settled in bones after blood had been spilled, and silence left too long to stretch. Mercy didn't ask questions, and Caleb didn't offer answers. They rode side by side across scorched earth, through low valleys where the grass had long given up, past dry creeks that once might have sung at dusk on the second day. They reached a rise overlooking the flats below. In the distance, Caleb saw the glint of tin on May's roof, small, weather-worn, familiar. He reined in his horse, heart thudding, quieter than it should have. Mercy pulled up beside him. "That it?" she asked. He nodded. "That's home, if she still wants it to be." Mercy looked at him for a moment, studying the way his jaw clenched. The way his fingers tapped the reins like a nervous habit. "She wanted," she said. "Anyone who lets a man like you leave and still keeps a fire going." "They don't do that unless they're waiting." He didn't answer, just nudged the Mustang forward. They reached the cabin by dark. No gunfire, no shouts, just the creak of leather and the scent of smoke on the air. A lantern burned in the window. He dismounted, heart in his throat. Before he could knock, the door opened. Dot May stood in the frame, rifle slung on her shoulder, sleeves rolled to the elbow. Her eyes met his and didn't move. No smile, no tears, just a long breath. "You came back," she said. "Told you I would." "And?" "Him buried." She stepped aside. "Then come in, both of you." Mercy hesitated, then followed. The inside of the cabin hadn't changed. Still small, still warm, still too quiet to trust. But now it felt different, like a place that could hold more than memory. Dot. They ate in silence. May passed bread and stew. Mercy barely touched hers. Caleb watched May's hand, the way they moved without shaking, the way they folded around the cup like they hadn't let go of hope yet. Dot, after the meal, Mercy stood. "I'll take the barn," she said. "You sure?" May asked. Dot. Mercy nodded. "I need the quiet." When she was gone, Caleb stayed seated, staring into the hearth. May leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You change out there?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "Lost more than I expected." "And gained?" He looked at her then, really looked. Maybe something worth coming back for. She moved closer, just enough for her fingers to brush his. Her voice dropped low, like a secret. "I kept your blanket folded." He swallowed hard. "That mean?" "I've still got a place." She met his eyes. "Only if you're done running." "I am." The fire popped softly, casting flickers on their skin. Outside, the wind sighed through the pines like a lullaby. Dot inside. Caleb Knox breathed in the stillness, not the silence of hiding, but the silence of belonging. Morning light spilled through the window like it belonged there, soft, warm, almost shy. Caleb blinked awake on the cot by the hearth, the smell of coffee already in the air. I was at the Ankashi stove, her back to him, sleeves rolled again, hair loose this time. Something about that small difference made the cabin feel lived, endless, like shelter, more like home. He stood, stretched, boots creaking on old floorboards. May turned slightly, handed him a cup without a word. He took it with a nod, finger brushing hers. That small touch said more than any greeting could. Mercy entered from outside, cheeks flushed from the cold. "Barn's got a mouse problem," she said, sliding into the chair near the fire. "I like it." Caleb smirked. "Better than coyotes?" She shot him a look, barely. May set out 3 plates, simple eggs and cornbread. They ate together, without fuss, like people who'd always done this, though it had only been hours. Afterward, Mercy pulled out her rifle and began cleaning it at the table. Caleb helped, passing cloth and oil, watching her hands work with careful purpose. "You plan on staying?" May asked her. Mercy paused. "A little while. Don't know what comes after." May nodded. "You don't have to know. Just don't run from it when it comes." Caleb caught the look they shared. 2 women carved from different wounds, but built of the same iron. He stood, stretched again. "I'll ride into town," he said. "Let 'em know Vane's finished. If the law asks, you can say the dirt swallowed him whole." May arched a brow. "You think they'll thank you for it?" He shook his head. "No, but maybe they'll leave us be." He saddled the Mustang by midday. Mercy watched from the porch, arms folded. "You sure about going alone?" "I rode into hell alone," he said. "Riding into town's the easier part." May joined them, stepping close. "Be back by nightfall." He gave her a look. "You expecting company?" "I expect you'll be hungry," he grinned. "You're not wrong." She reached up, touched the edge of his collar, straightened it like it meant something. "And Caleb?" "Yeah? Don't let them take pieces of you that don't belong to them." His throat tightened. "I'll come back whole." He rode off into a wind that didn't feel so cold anymore. The plains stretched wide around him, the sky open and endless, but he didn't feel lost, not this time. When he reached town, heads turned. The saloon doors swung slow. The sheriff stepped out, hand already on his hip. "You got business here, Knox?" he asked. Caleb dismounted. Silas Vane's dead. "I put him there. You can ride out and find the grave if you want, but you won't find a threat breathing in it." The sheriff studied him. "You turning yourself in?" Caleb stared back, calm. "I'm turning the page." A long silence. Then the sheriff nodded. "Reckon the world's better off." He turned. "You best ride before the wrong ears hear that name." Caleb mounted again. "I'm done with the road." And he was done as he rode back. The sun dipped low. The horizon burned gold and crimson behind the hills. Ahead he saw the thin ribbon of smoke rising from the cabin chimney, and for the first time in years, Caleb Knox rode not toward escape, but toward home. The days that followed passed in a rhythm Caleb had almost forgotten existed. Fences to mend, wood to split, quiet evenings with cornbread, firelight, and voices that didn't need to raise to be heard. May moved through the cabin like the wind measured, certain, always returning. Mercy stayed too, sleeping in the loft, helping with the chickens, sharpening blades without being asked. No one said the word family, but it hung in the air anyway, fragile and real. One morning, Caleb found himself staring at the horizon, coffee in hand, wondering why the stillness no longer made him flinch. Maybe it was the way May hummed while chopping onions, or the way Mercy had started braiding her hair again, like someone planning to stay alive. He rode into town once a week now. Not hiding, not hunted. Folks didn't welcome him, but they didn't reach for guns either. That was enough. He bought flour, salt, sometimes coffee. He once bought ribbon blue, the color of dusk, and handed it to May without saying why. She said nothing either, just tied it around her wrist like a secret. But peace, like spring in the desert, never lasted long. It came with a man in a gray coat, tall, lean, skin like leather, voice like dry wind. He rode into town asking questions about Vane, about Caleb, about the girl who shot straight, and the woman who lived too far from the law. The sheriff didn't like him. Told Caleb the next day, standing outside the post office with a toothpick and a twitch in his jaw. Said his name's Ryland. The sheriff muttered. Pinkerton badge, real quiet, real dangerous. Caleb's jaw tightened. He asked where I live? No, the sheriff said, but he will. That night, Caleb didn't sleep. He sat outside, shotgun across his lap, watching the dark like it owed him something. May joined him after midnight, wrapped in her shawl, hair loose again, the blue ribbon now around her braid. You feel it, don't you? She asked. Yeah. Storm? He shook his head. Worse, men who think justice comes with a price. Will he come? He'll come. Then we wait. And they did. The next afternoon, Ryland arrived. Alone. No horses. No posse. Just him and a letter in his breast pocket, sealed with red wax. He knocked once. Caleb opened the door with a hand on his gun. You Caleb Knox? You already know the answer. Ryland didn't smile, just looked past him, into the house, where May stood by the stove and Mercy cleaned her knife. Got a request for questioning, he said. Yuma wants your words on what happened in the canyon. Caleb didn't flinch. And if I say no? Ryland looked around, nodded once. Then I tell him you were already gone. Caleb's eyes narrowed. Why? Ryland leaned in. Because some ghosts don't need graves, they need silence. And just like that, he turned, walked off down the dirt path, boots quiet, coat flapping like a flag nobody saluted. Mercy exhaled. That's it? May shook her head. Not the end, but maybe a pause. Caleb stepped out into the yard, looked at the sky. Clouds were gathering, not dark, not violent, just heavy, like rain after a long drought. And for the first time he wasn't afraid of what came next. He was ready. 3 days passed before the rain came. Not a drizzle. A full storm rolling down from the northern peaks like judgment. Thunder shook the cabin walls. The roof groaned. Water beat against the windows in thick sheets, and inside the fire burned, steady, throwing gold across wood and skin and silence. Caleb sat near the hearth, boots drying beside him. Mercy curled on the floor with her rifle disassembled across a rag. She hummed to herself as she cleaned the barrel. It wasn't a song Caleb knew. It sounded like home, even if it wasn't his. May moved between them, kettle in hand, pouring coffee, like she'd always done it, without asking, without spilling, without ever needing thanks. Caleb watched her, the way she walked, how she leaned into the light like someone who no longer flinched from it. You always this quiet when the sky falls? May asked, settling into her chair. Caleb shrugged. Rain makes a man listen to things he's tried to forget. Mercy looked up, voice low. Like what? He didn't answer. Not at first. Then he reached behind the hearthstone and pulled out a small tin box, worn, dented. He opened it with care. Inside a folded letter, a child's drawing, a tarnished ring. My brother died in a mine collapse when I was 16. I ran, left my father to bury him alone. His voice was flat, distant. Silas found me, gave me a gun, a horse, a lie to believe in. May's hand stilled on her cup. Mercy said nothing. I carried this ever since, Caleb went on. The last thing my father gave me. Said it was for when I remembered who I really was. He set the box on the table like it burned. I remember now. The room held its breath. Then May reached out, closed the tin, and slid it back toward him. We don't live in who we were. We live in who we protect, Mercy added, and who we bury. Outside, the storm began to slow. The thunder moved farther away, like a train leaving the edge of the world. That night, Mercy fell asleep with her rifle beside her, the dog-eared drawing folded under her coat. May and Caleb sat awake, shoulder to shoulder, watching the fire settle into coals. I'm tired, he said. You look it, she replied. You regret letting me in? May looked at him then, really looked. I regret waiting so long to hope. He didn't answer, just leaned his head back, let the warmth soak into old wounds. The storm passed, but the air didn't feel empty. It felt clean. Like something had been forgiven without needing to be spoken. Spring crept in slow, like it was testing the ground for traps. The snow melted first, then the mud thickened, then finally the green. Not much, but enough blades of stubborn grass by the fence post, tiny yellow flowers in the cracks of the old stone path. The kind of life that didn't need permission to exist. Caleb fixed the roof with Mercy while May tended the chickens. A new hen had hatched 3 chicks, and she named them after storms, Dusty, Thunder, and Gale. Caleb thought it was foolish at first, but every time May said their name out loud, something inside the cabin felt lighter. Mercy talked more now, still quiet, but less guarded. She helped Caleb in the yard, taught him how to carve a bowline knot with rabbit twine, told him stories of her sister, not just how she died, but how she lived, about the way she sang in the fields, loud and out of tune, how she could shoot straighter than their father. They built a coop together, fenced the western edge of the property, repaired a broken windmill that hadn't spun in 5 years, and one evening they sat on the porch, eating cornbread, watching the wind push across the plain like a slow hand, smoothing out sorrow. "Think they'll come back?" Mercy asked. Caleb didn't need to ask who. Ruined. The Pinkertons. The world outside this patch of dirt. "They always do," he said. "But we'll be ready." May stepped out then, wiping flour from her hands. "You both always this cheerful under good skies?" Mercy grinned, Beats staring at the wall. May leaned on the railing. "Good skies don't last. That's why you enjoy them while they're overhead." That night they lit a lantern and played cards. Caleb dealt slow. Mercy cheated twice. May caught her the second time and said nothing, just raised an eyebrow. They laughed, really laughed, for the first time in what felt like 1,000 winters. The next morning a letter arrived. No one saw who left it. No horse tracks, no name, just a scrap of canvas nailed to the fence post, folded inside. A single line, "They haven't forgotten." No signature, no seal, but the weight of it was heavy as lead. Caleb read it twice, then burned it. May stood beside him, arms crossed, eyes hard. "Trouble?" He met her gaze. "Coming." Mercy stepped out, rifle already slung across her shoulder. Then, "Let it. They didn't pack, didn't run. They just cleaned the guns, checked the windows, fed the animals, and waited not in fear, but in defiance." The first to appear was a dust trail, just after noon, thin and fast-moving across the southern rise. Caleb spotted it through the cracked lens of the spyglass he'd found years ago in a burned-out wagon. He tracked it in silence, watching the way it twisted, too narrow for a posse, too sharp for a trader. A scout, maybe two, testing the land. He didn't say a word to May or Mercy. He just stepped off the porch and saddled the Mustang. They heard the creak of the leather and came out without needing to ask. "Visitors?" May asked, tying back her braid. "Soon." Mercy already had her rifle across her back. "Scouts?" "Smells like it," Caleb said. "They're sniffing, trying to decide if we're worth the fight." May's jaw tightened. "We are." He looked at her. "You sure about that?" "I've buried too many men who thought otherwise." That night they didn't light the lantern, didn't play cards. They just sat on the porch, guns oiled, silence between them tight and sharp. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere, out in the dark, there were men with plans. Men who had been told Caleb Knox should have died years ago. In the distance, an owl called. Then silence again. At dawn, the riders came. 5 of them, cresting the ridge like shadows on horseback. Black dusters, broad hats, rifles slung lazy but closed. They didn't shout, didn't aim, just rode slow into the clearing, their horses careful with each step. One dismounted. He was younger than the rest, but his eyes were already carved with cruelty. He held a paper in one hand. "Caleb Knox?" he asked, though he already knew. Caleb stepped forward, 1 foot off the porch. "You carry a badge?" "No," the man said. "I carry memory of a bank job in Silver Bend, of a widow who never got her son back." Mercy's fingers tightened around her belt. May didn't move. "You came for revenge," Caleb said. The man smiled. "Call it accounting." "You want my name," Caleb said. "You ride alone next time." The man's smile faded. "I don't plan to ride at all. Not until you're in the ground." Caleb looked past it, at the others, at the horses, at the narrow line of road behind them. "Then I hope you brought a shovel." No one drew. Not yet. But every man there knew it was only seconds away. The clearing was a powder keg waiting for a spark, and then it came. A shot, sharp, clean, not from the clearing, from the barn. One, of the riders toppled backward, blood blooming on his chest. Mercy stood in the hayloft, rifle braced against the beam. "You said nothing about Mercy," she muttered. Gunfire exploded. Caleb rolled to the right, fired twice. One missed. One found bone. May ducked behind the porch beam and opened up with the shotgun, scattering buckshot like rain. When the dust settled, 2 men were dead, 1 was crawling, and the rest were gone. The young one silent now, a hole in his shoulder groaned in. The dirt. Caleb stood over him, smoke curling from the end of his revolver. "You want revenge?" he said. "Take it somewhere else. Ain't nothing left of the man you're chassin' but a name, and I buried it months ago." The man spat blood. "You think you get to walk free?" "No," Caleb said, "but I get to walk." He turned. Mercy climbed down from the loft, face hard, eyes full. May stood on the porch, reloading with steady hands. They didn't speak, didn't need to. They had drawn a line in the dirt, and no one crossed it without bleeding. They buried the bodies out past the fence line, under a row of crooked mesquite trees where the earth was loose and the wind never quite stopped moving. No prayers were said. Caleb didn't believe in them, and Mercy said the only words she knew were meant for the living. The wounded one Eli rode off just after sunset, shoulder bound, pride in tatters. Caleb let him go. A dead man can't carry warning. A broken one can. That night they sat in silence again, firelight flickering across worn faces and old ghosts. May placed a fresh pot of coffee between them, then sat with her knees pulled up, gaze fixed on the window. Mercy kept watch near the door, rifle on her lap, legs tucked under her like a resting fox. "You think that's the end of it?" Mercy asked quietly. Caleb didn't look up. "There ain't ever an end, just less noise between storms." "You could have killed him," she said. "I did," Caleb replied. "Just left the body breathin'." May's voice cut in, softer than the others but firmer, too. "You didn't kill him. You spared him. Don't twist it." Caleb looked at her, and something unspoken passed between them. Not guilt, not shame, just the understanding that mercy carried its own weight. Outside, coyotes howled, but the cabin stood strong. In the morning, May brought out her sewing kit. The porch rail had taken a bullet and splintered wide, and she stitched canvas across it like patching skin. Caleb worked the post, resetting nails. Mercy cleaned every weapon they owned, lined them up along the table like tools of a trade passed down in blood. They didn't talk about leaving. None of them packed. Something had anchored them. Midweek, a rider came from town. Sammy, the mail boy, no older than 15, riding too fast, hat half lost in the wind. He slid off his horse and handed Caleb a folded slip. "What's this?" "Sheriff. Sent it. Pinkertons pulled out. Rillin's gone." "Where?" Sammy shrugged. "Didn't say. Just told the town you were no longer under warrant. Said your slate was burned clean." Caleb opened the note. No signature. Just 3 words. "Keep it buried." He crumpled the paper, tossed it into the stove, and shut the iron door. That night they ate stew and drank coffee so strong it bit back. Mercy dozed by the hearth. Caleb played with the edge of a silver coin he'd carried since before the war, spinning it on the table until it fell flat with a soft clink. May stood behind him, her hand brushing his shoulder. "You can stay," she said. He looked up. "Can I?" "You already are." He reached up, touched her wrist, gentle, like he was afraid it would vanish. "I don't know what to be if I'm not running," he whispered. She leaned down, her voice warm in his ear. "Then stand still, Caleb Knox, just once. Let the world come to you." Outside, the wind had died. The sky stretched wide and star-scattered, and for the first time in a long time, no one was watching the door, because no one needed to. It was a quiet morning, the kind that didn't ask questions, the kind that slipped through the cracks in the porch boards and smelled like pine and new earth. Caleb rose early, fed the stock, and took the long way around the fence line just to feel the air. The Mustang followed him without reins, like it understood there was nowhere to rush toward anymore. Mercy slept in for once. She'd spent the night writing something in a small, leather-bound notebook, words she wouldn't share, but guarded like gold. May had left bread rising on the stove and gone down to the stream to wash linens. The rhythm of their lives had softened, but it hadn't dulled. They were still sharp in the right places. Caleb spotted boot prints near the eastern edge of the fence. Not fresh, maybe a day old, but not theirs. Wide tread, angled heel. A scout again. Or a message. He crouched, pressed his palm to the dirt. Still warm, he didn't panic. Just followed. The trail didn't go far, only to the edge of the ravine, where the trees grew tighter. There, tied to a branch with a strip of red cloth, was a bullet. Just one, polished, meant to be seen. He took it without a word, turned it in his fingers. .44 caliber. Same kind Silas used. Same kind he'd used for years. A message, a promise, a warning. He returned to the cabin before the sun was high. Mercy met him on the porch. "You look like you saw a ghost." "I think I saw what's left." "Of one," Caleb said. May looked up from kneading dough. "More riders?" "Not yet." He opened his hand, showed her the bullet. "But someone's still watching." She studied it, then looked him in the eyes. "Do we run?" "No." "Do we hide?" He shook his head. "We prepare." That afternoon they built a second cellar under the floorboards. Mercy rigged a tripwire system across the south path. May buried coin under the chicken coop and moved her valuables into a false drawer beneath the stove. They didn't speak in fear. They moved like people who had decided not to be prey. That night, Mercy brought out her notebook and read aloud. Just one page. "There's no such thing as peace, only the pause between questions. And I think we've earned a moment of quiet, even if the storm still remembers our names." Caleb said nothing, but something in him loosened at those words. May reached for his hand, took it, didn't let go. The fire cracked. The night breathed in, and far off in a place beyond maps and memory, someone held an empty rifle and smiled at the stars, knowing the game wasn't finished. Not yet. But for now, the board was quiet, and the players, they were learning how to live. The sun rose lazy, dragging shadows across the plains like they didn't matter. Caleb was already up, sitting on the porch rail with his coffee gone cold. His eyes weren't on the land, they were on the road. It hadn't brought anything good in years, and yet he couldn't stop watching it. Behind him, the cabin stirred. Mercy yawned loud and unbothered, dragging her boots across the floor as she walked to the stove. "If you're gonna keep watch, at least warm the coffee," she muttered. May followed not long after, hair tied back, sleeves rolled. "You hear something?" Caleb shook his head. "Just listening to what ain't there." "Same as yesterday," Mercy said, pouring 2 cups, "and maybe tomorrow." But at WSN single quotes T. near midday, a rider approached, not from the south, where trouble usually came, but from the west over the dry ridges through the narrow passes, where only locals bothered to travel. He rode slow, hands visible, a single rifle strapped to the saddle. His horse limped slightly, favoring its front left. When he reached the gate, he dismounted and removed his hat. "Name's Jonah Black," he called out. "Used to ride dispatch out of Fort Griffin. I ain't armed to kill, just here to speak." Caleb stepped forward, shotgun resting across one shoulder. "Speak, then." Jonah nodded, pulled a folded paper from his coat, and held it out. "Found this in a hollow stump near Redding Pass, marked with your name, Caleb took it, unfolded. It's slow. The handwriting was unmistakable. Harsh, lean, full of ghosts. The past don't stay buried, and neither do the men you forgot. Beneath that, a name. One that hadn't passed Caleb's lips in years. John Grady. Caleb's fingers tightened around the page. He was with Vane? May asked. Caleb nodded slowly. Worse, he was before him. Mercy looked between them. You never said that name. Didn't want to remember it, Caleb muttered. Jonah shifted uneasily. I don't know what you've got tied up in that name, but I was told to deliver it and ride on. Man who left it said he'd meet you on the 10th day of spring at Dead Murray Ridge. That's 4 days from now, Caleb, said Jonah, mounted again. If you go, don't go alone. And then he was gone. Caleb stared at the letter until May reached out and took it from his hand. What's Dead Murray Ridge? A place no one goes twice, he said. Mercy stood. Then we go once, together. He looked at her. You sure? I was sure the day I saw you bury Silas. Some men bury pain. You stare it down. May added softly, we don't let you go alone again. Not ever. The rest of the day passed in slow preparation. Rifles checked, canteens filled. Mercy sharpened every blade twice. May packed food and bandages like she knew what was coming, but didn't want to name it. That night, they sat by the fire again. This time the silence was different. Not tense, not tired. Just final dot, because some storms don't pass, some storms wait. And Caleb Knox had decided to ride into one. They rode out at dawn. No words, just saddle, creaks, and hoofbeats across brittle earth. Caleb led, Mercy to his right, May close behind. The sun hung low like a warning, casting long shadows that looked like memories reaching for their heels. Dead. Murray Ridge wasn't marked on maps. It didn't need to be. Folks remembered it in the way they avoided the northern trails, the way old men stopped talking when the wind shifted from that direction. It was a jagged place, bone-white stone, wind-warped trees, and a silence too heavy to be natural. By midday, they reached the outskirts. The land flattened, then rose sharply into twisted rock and steep cuts of canyon. Mercy slowed her horse. This place feels cursed. Caleb didn't disagree. It is. May dismounted first. We go in on foot. They tied the horses in the shade of a crooked cedar. Caleb checked his revolver, then slung the shotgun across his back. Mercy carried her long rifle like it was part of her spine. May took only a knife, but that was enough. They climbed the ridge slowly. Each step sent gravel skipping down into the emptiness below. The wind here didn't blow, it whispered, and somewhere inside that whisper was a name Caleb hadn't said in 12 years. John Grady, the man who'd taught him how to shoot between heartbeats, who'd left him in the mud after a failed heist near Santa Fe, bleeding out, lungs full of dirt, who'd once said, you don't kill a man unless you're ready to bury him in your own soul. Near the peak, they found a flat of stone marked with a single boot print fresh. He's here, Caleb said. Then they heard it, clapping, slow, echoing against the canyon walls. John Grady stepped out from the shadows behind a dead pine, older, thinner, with the same grin, crooked, cold. Didn't think you'd bring company, Knox, he said. Always figured you'd crawl to me alone, like a dog that forgot how to bite. I'm not crawling, Caleb said. John shrugged. Close enough. He looked at Mercy and May. Family? Or just your conscience dressed in skirts? May took a step forward, knife in hand. One more word and I'll open your throat, John smirked. That's the fire I remember. He pulled the revolver, spun it once, and pointed it lazily at Caleb. You've got a debt, boy, and it's past due. Caleb didn't move. I paid it in blood long ago. John shook his head. You don't get to decide what counts. Then everything moved. Mercy fired first missed by an inch, bullet carving stone near John's feet. He ducked, rolled, fired back. Caleb spun left, returning fire, while May surged forward, knife flashing like lightning. John was fast, but not fast enough. Caleb's shot took him in the leg. He stumbled. Mercy's second round slammed into his shoulder. He dropped to one knee, blood darkening. His coat. Still, he grinned. Should have killed me back then, Knox. Now look at you, domesticated, tamed. Caleb walked forward, stood over him, shotgun ready. No, he said quietly. Now I'm just not afraid anymore. John raised his gun, and May's knife buried itself in his chest. He gasped, eyes wide, then slumped forward without a word. Silence returned, but not the kind that lingered before a storm. This one felt final. Caleb exhaled. Mercy lowered her rifle. May stood over the body, steady as stone. They didn't bury him. Not there. Not in that cursed ground. They left him for the scavengers and the wind. As they rode back, Caleb didn't look over his shoulder, because some men weren't meant to be mourned, only forgotten. They returned at dusk, the cabin glowing soft beneath the twilight sky. Smoke curled from the chimney like it had missed them. The wind was calm. The land didn't feel like it had changed, but they had no one spoke that night. They moved through routine like it was a hymn. Mercy brushing the dust off her boots before coming inside, May humming low while she stirred the pot on the stove, and Caleb quiet, still watching the fire as if it might blink after supper. Mercy stepped out onto the porch alone, rifle across her lap. She didn't say where she'd be or how long. She just needed the stars May sat across from Caleb at the table. The lantern between them flickered, its light dancing across the silver ring Caleb had left resting beside his cup. She eyed it. That for someone? He hesitated. It was once, and now? He picked it up, turned it in his fingers. Now it's a reminder that I'm not who I was, but I still carry him. May reached across, closed his hand gently around the ring, then carry him forward, not behind. He nodded, and that was enough. In the days that followed, life didn't slow, it settled. Mercy began carving figures from pine, leaving them on the windowsill. A fox, a hawk, a lone horse. Caleb taught her to track deer without stepping on dry twigs. May planted herbs by the back wall and started writing in a journal she never let either of them read. The scars didn't vanish. They never would, but the space around them grew quieter. Kinder. One morning, Caleb woke before the sun. He stepped outside and stared at the horizon where the sky bled orange and gold. A new day, unpromised, unafraid. He didn't reach for a gun, didn't check the trail. He just breathed. Behind him, the cabin stirred. May's voice hummed softly from the kitchen. Mercy's boots thumped across the loft. The smell of coffee drifted out like a welcome and for the first time in his life, Caleb Knox didn't feel like a man who had survived the world. He felt like a man who had built one.